Pretty good arguments on both sides. Let me quickly bring our guests into the conversation. Pleased to have Lisa Pinto, our old friend with us, former prosecutor, and we have Gwendolyn Lindsay Jackson joining us, criminal defense attorney and also a former prosecutor. Ask you both, ladies, how do you think it's going to come down? Which of those two arguments persuades you? Gwen, first?
I think what's going to be persuasive is, as I said, as Jean just pointed out, whether or not it's reasonable to assume that this guy, whether he knew that he struck this woman when he struck the woman.
So it's about what he knew or what he should have known. Oh, very interesting and a compassionate argument. You can see he really believes in the innocence of his client. But let me come back out to my guest. Gwen, I think you're still with us, our criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, I hasten to add, Gwendolyn Lindsay Jackson. So what do you think of this approach? My guy is not a monster approach.
Well, I think they're trying to humanize him. They're trying to make it seem like this guy wouldn't have, if he had known that he hit this poor woman, have left the scene. However, it doesn't really cover the gap, the 13, the hour gap. However, when you look at this with a little bit of common sense, it possibly could have been that the guy was impaired and maybe the police had an obligation to blood test him, not for alcohol, but for something else. And if they drop the ball on this, is it really his responsibility?
Yeah, and even if they didn't, the burden of proof is with the prosecution. Why was it written, Lisa Pinto?
Because drunk, high people run away after they get in an accident because they know they'll be in deep doo-doo if they're found at the scene high as a kite or drunk, because that enhances the penalties, which the jury will be considering when they wonder why it took him 13 hours to turn himself in. Exactly, so he couldn't be blood tested, so he couldn't be breathalyzed, so the police would have no direct evidence that he was high as a kite when he was knocking women off the bridge.
The police could have blood tested him. They had an opportunity to do that. Had they been doing their jobs diligently, they would have blood tested him. Maybe they wouldn't have found alcohol, but God knows what else they could have found.
And Lisa, they should have at least run the test. I think it's a pretty compelling closing argument. Gwen, what do you think? I like that he doesn't cast any aspersions on the prosecutor. He says she would never willingly mislead you, but don't be misled. And then he makes his point. I like that approach.
I think it's a great approach also. It's basically saying, look, you could have made mistakes, and therefore Adam could have been in a position where he could have made a mistake, okay? Now here's a guy that the whole thing boils down to a basic principle. Did he know that he hit those women on the bridge? Now we know that